Hi, I'm Cher Safran with Share Wisdom Network and host of the Nautilus Book Awards Author Spotlight Series. Now celebrating 20 years of honoring better books for a better world, Nautilus Book Awards continues this important mission forward to spotlight visionary books that co-create a better world and more positive future. The Nautilus Awards embraces books from a wide spectrum of the publishing industry and radiate hope and wisdom, inspiring and connecting our lives as individuals, communities, and planetary citizens. This is a vast and crucial conversation now more than ever. The Author Spotlight Series offers opportunity to increase the volume and visibility of the authors' voices as found in these empowering Nautilus Award-winning books. Author David Levine is with us here today, sharing insights from his Nautilus Award-winning book, A Year of Belonging, 52 Reflections and Practices for Educators, which won the Silver Award in the Relationships and Communication category. I'm delighted to tell you about David Levine. He's an educator, writer, and musician with more than 35 years of experience working in a multitude of educational settings as a teacher, community builder, and coach. In 2016, he founded Teaching Empathy Institute with the intention of making a difference in the lives of children, teachers, and families. As a songwriter and producer, David uses his songs and digital materials as learning tools, including the music dialogue process, which inspires both children and adults to look within to make a positive difference with others. And he's currently producing a documentary film on his work with schools throughout the world. Welcome, David. I am delighted to have you here today.
Thank you, Cher. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Your book, A Year of Belonging, is so extraordinary, and I know you've written it for educators, but honestly, the insights and the 52 practices that you share can help us with anyone who has children or is related to children or doing anything with children. So I would love for that book to be in everybody's hands. But I think the condition of our social world right now is especially in need of your insights and your practices. The way that you help bring us together is so essential. And I think maybe to start our conversation, it would be great for you to just read an excerpt that kind of sets the stage for this amazing book.
The section that I'm going to be reading is entitled Longing to Be. In August 2001, I attended a weekend workshop in an old monastery on the banks of the Hudson River in Port Ewan, New York, where poet David White recited his poem, The House of Belonging. Here's an excerpt. This is the bright home in which I live. This is where I ask my friends to come. This is where I want to love all the things it has taken me so long to learn to love. As I listened to David recite his poem and share his reflections on his lifelong pursuit of belonging, I began thinking of the many disconnected students and teachers I had worked with in schools over the years. I wondered what a school of belonging could look like. I imagined a place where the conditions would exist for all staff and students to feel safe enough to find their unique voice of heartfelt expression, where they could embrace that voice and share it with others while on a pathway to a joyful and purpose-filled life. Since that day, 18 years ago, when I listened to David speak, I have taken this wonder with me into schools and classrooms as part of my work with teachers and students across the United States and beyond. During this time, I came to understand that a school of belonging is not a curriculum or program, but rather a way of being, grounded in holding the guiding stars of compassion and empathy for ourselves and embodying those traits in our relationships with students, colleagues, and within the communities where we live and work. Through the years, a huge part of my self-development process of action research on belonging, community building, and student expression has been to seek out lessons of inspiration and innovation not only from people involved in the traditional educational world, but also through those who I consider to be master humanists and visionaries. Some of these people include poets, musicians, novelists, youth workers, social activists, artists, spiritual teachers, leadership specialists, scientists, songwriters, depth psychologists, and wilderness guides. Throughout this book, I include words from those luminaries whose work has had the greatest impact on me, helping to forge and clarify my own beliefs about my life with students, the adults with whom I work, and the purpose of the work we all do on behalf of our students. I translate these inspired thoughts into a series of educational artistic practices, some of which are reflective tools for educators, while others are specific classroom processes and dialogue sessions for use with students. These include student dialogue, journaling, goal setting, self-regulation, and high-level communication skill development.
Beautiful, and it is just brimming with incredible insights, guidance, and beautiful quotes. So what, in your work with the School of Belonging, what is one idea that you consider maybe one of the most important?
Well, I think whether it's within a school or a community or a family, it's all moving from relationships. The most important thing we can do is to intentionally build healthy, safe relationships with children, and in the process, with ourselves. There's nothing more painful for a young person than to be with a group and feel alienated, isolated, or alone. And there's nothing more amazing than to feel a part of things, connected, included, listened to, like you belong.
And in fact, David, I have had an opportunity to hear this incredible song that you sing that illustrates exactly that. So will you share that song with us?
Yes, I will. Just as David White's poem moved me 18 years ago, this song moved me 35 years ago to create caring, loving, compassionate learning and communities for children. The song is a true story, and it was written by a person who's now a good friend of mine. His name is Lee Doman, and it's called Howard Gray. Most everyone I knew put the whole Gray family down. They were the poorest family in that little country town. Howard always looked too big for his funny, ragged clothes. The kids all laughed at him, Jimmy Jones would thumb his nose. Howard sat across from me in 7th grade at school. Didn't like it much, but Mama taught the golden rule. So when the spitballs flew at him, never would join in. I guess that was the reason Howard thought I was his friend. And after things would quiet down, sometimes I'd turn and see the grateful eyes of Howard Gray looking back at me. Howard Gray, oh, Howard Gray. Somehow they got their kicks out of treating you that way. Deep down, well, I kind of liked you, but I was too afraid to be a friend to you, Howard Gray. But one day after lunch, I went to comb my hair and saw they had Howard pinned against the locker in the hall. They were poking fun about the big hole in his shirt. They had his left arm twisted back behind him till it hurt. To this day I can't explain and I won't try to guess just how it was I wound up laughing harder than the rest. Well, I laughed until I cried. Through my tears, I still could see the tear-stained eyes of Howard Gray looking back at me. Howard Gray, oh, Howard Gray. Well, I can't believe I joined them all, treating you that way. Well, I wanted to apologize, but I was too afraid of what they think about me, Howard Gray. Well, from that moment on, after I made fun of him, he never looked my way, he never smiled at me again. And not much longer after that, his family moved away. That's the last I ever saw or heard of Howard Gray. Well, that was 20 years ago. I still haven't found just why we'll kick a brother or a sister when they're down. I know it may sound crazy, but now and then I dream about the eyes of Howard Gray looking back at me. Howard Gray, oh, Howard Gray. Well, I've never quite forgiven us for treating you that way. Well, I only hope that somehow you can hear this song someday, and you'll know that I am sorry, Howard Gray. We'll probably never meet again. All I can do is pray. May you and God forgive us, Howard Gray.
That is so beautiful, so touching, and so relatable to almost everyone on this planet. That most of us have been in a situation where we didn't stand up for someone who was in need. And that is, it just speaks to that depth that you are reaching for us to touch and to bring out into our world. How do you do that with your school, with your teachers and parents?
That song is one of the ways that I begin the process. It began the process for me. I always think that when I'm working with an individual or a group of people, and we're looking ahead to create a caring culture, one where empathy and compassion ground us in our relationships. And as I said before, everything moves from there. If we don't start out in the same place, we won't end up in the same place. So what that song does, it's how I begin. It brings us all into the conversation, the authentic reflection of what it feels like to, one, be an outsider. Secondly, not to do the thing that you feel compelled to do, not to reach out. I find people often hear that song and they think, how could someone treat someone that way? That's so horrible. And this is, of course, happening in our country right now. How could people treat others this way? And what starts to happen, the deeper you go. To quote Marianne Williamson, the deeper inward we travel, or the further inward we travel, the further outward we can travel. So it starts within and moves outside of us, as your intro stated. So what that song does is it helps us go within and suddenly start reflecting and remembering and realizing that there are parts of us that were not just the person who was an outsider, but maybe the one who didn't step up, maybe the one who kept someone out. And once that realization comes to life, now we can sit down and do some work. And that's really what my book is. I have 52 quotes, as you know, and each quote is intended to get someone to go deeper within and reflect And then once that reflection takes place, to provide the tool, the practice, to work with not just with students, but with colleagues, with other adults in our lives. And I create belonging in schools and communities by having the conversation. In the book, we talk about dialogue. It's a critical form, music dialogue or just dialogue in relationship. And dialogue means to collectively explore an issue, not to so much agree, but to come to an understanding. And once we can start from that place, I understand where you're coming from, and you want to understand where I'm coming from. Now we can move ahead together and honor one another. When that takes place, we can create classrooms, hallways, schools of belonging, learning communities of belonging, and communities outside the school, communities of belonging as well.
I love that. And it's so critical right now. It's so critical. You mentioned the beautiful quotes that you have throughout the book. Is there one in particular that you'd like to share today?
Yes, I have one right here from poet Naomi Shihab Nye. She's also a songwriter. And I had the opportunity to get to know Naomi a few years ago. And it was one of those experiences where there was someone who came into my life, and I only knew her for a little bit of time, but she definitely had an impact on me. And certainly her writings have continued to do so. So this is a quote from the book. "Let me peer out at the world through your lens. Maybe I'll shudder or gasp or tilt my head in a question. Let me see how your blue is my turquoise and my orange is your gold. Suddenly, binary stars, we have startling gravity. Let's compare scintillation. Let's share starlight."
That is gorgeous. That is gorgeous. And in addition to all these beautiful quotes, meaningful, deep, insightful, you have all these practices, very practical guidance for us. So, David, I'm sorry we're nearing the end of this time. I wish we had all day. What do you hope your readers will take away from this book?
Two things. I want them to celebrate in the sacred challenge of being significant adults in the lives of children, whether they're teachers or youth workers or parents or community members, that it is a sacred and noble dynamic to be working with children every day, and to celebrate that through the quotes. And the second thing I want them to take away is how they can create that sense of sacredness and celebration within each child. So in other words, to create the conditions in their relationships where young people feel safe, understood, and listened to help those children find their unique voice to the world. That's my hope for this book and this collection.
That's my hope for the world. Thank you so much, David Levine, for touching our hearts, opening our minds, inspiring our lives, and infecting the well-being of children around the world through your beautiful, extraordinary book, A Year of Belonging, 52 Reflections and Practices for Educators. Thank you.
Thank you, Cher. It's an honor.
And on behalf of the Nautilus Book Awards team, thank you all.